I still remember that night like it was yesterday. The night when every whisper in that grand ballroom stopped the second I walked in. It wasn't just a gala. It was the event of the year, hosted by my billionaire boss, Mr. Alexander Holt, the man everyone admired but secretly envied. And me? I was just his secretary, the one people barely noticed, the one they laughed at behind closed doors. For years, I'd been called the plain girl, the forgettable assistant, the one who fetched coffee but was never seen as a woman worthy of being at his side. The other employees would smirk, their eyes filled with pity or mockery, as if my worth was defined by the reflection in the mirror I had stopped looking into long ago. But that night, everything changed. The invitation came unexpectedly, printed on embossed gold paper, slipped onto my desk one late afternoon. I thought it was a mistake. "Sir, I think this was meant for someone else," I had said timidly when I brought it to his office. But Alexander didn't even look up from his laptop. He just said, "No mistake, Evelyn. I want you there." My heart skipped a beat. Why me? For days I couldn't stop thinking about it. Rumors spread quickly around the office, people whispering that he felt sorry for me. Or worse, that it was some cruel joke. I could feel their eyes on me as I walked through the corridors, pretending not to hear their laughter. I almost decided not to go. Almost. But then I looked at myself in the mirror that night before the event, and something in me stirred a small, fragile spark that whispered, "You deserve to be seen." I took every bit of courage I had, every piece of insecurity I carried, and turned it into quiet determination. The old Evelyn stayed behind in that tiny apartment. When I stepped out in that gown, a shimmering sapphire dress that hugged me perfectly, I wasn't just a secretary anymore. I was someone who had finally decided to stop hiding. And when I walked into that ballroom, heels clicking on marble, the music faded, the laughter stopped, and every single person who once mocked me stared as if they had seen a ghost. The moment I entered, the chandelier's golden light hit the dress just right, scattering tiny reflections across the floor like stars at my feet. Heads turned one by one, conversations froze mid-sentence, and champagne glasses hovered in mid-air. I could hear the faint gasp of Ms. Clark, the senior executive who once told me I looked too ordinary to ever represent the company at public events. Now her lips parted, her expression a mix of disbelief and envy. For a second, I wanted to shrink back into the shadows like I always did. But then I saw Alexander standing near the stage, dressed in a sleek black tuxedo, watching me with a faint, knowing smile. My stomach twisted. I didn't know if he was proud or just amused. "Evelyn?" he said softly when I reached him, his tone low but clear enough for those nearby to hear. "You look stunning." My heart pounded so loud I could barely breathe. Around us, the murmurs began again, rippling through the room like a wave. "That's his secretary? No way, she's unrecognizable. Did she have surgery or something?" Every word pricked my skin, but I kept my chin high. The string quartet resumed playing. The clinking of glasses returned, but the air never quite settled. I could feel eyes following me wherever I moved. 1,000 unspoken judgments filling the silence. Alexander offered his arm, and when I took it, I felt the entire atmosphere shift. It wasn't just surprise anymore, it was curiosity, admiration, maybe even jealousy. He guided me toward a group of investors, introducing me with an ease that made my chest tighten. "This is Evelyn, my secretary," he said, and I saw the flicker of recognition cross their faces. Some smiled politely, others barely concealed their shock. One of them, Mr. Grant, chuckled and said, "Well, Alexander, you certainly know how to make an entrance with company like that." The group laughed lightly, but I caught the subtle edge in his tone. Alexander didn't laugh. He just placed his hand on my back, steady, protective. "Evelyn deserves to be here," he said, his voice calm but firm. I smiled faintly, even as a wave of anxiety washed over me. Because deep down, I couldn't help wondering why had he really invited me. As the night went on, I tried to play the part of someone who belonged there, smiling when spoken to, nodding at conversations about stock markets and mergers I barely understood. But inside, my thoughts were racing. I could feel people's eyes darting to me and away again, like they couldn't decide whether to compliment or criticize. Waiters glided past with trays of champagne, and I clung to my glass as if it were my anchor in that glittering sea of power and pretense. Every time someone laughed nearby, I was sure it was about me. Then I saw Miranda, Alexander's ex-girlfriend, and the company's marketing director, making her grand entrance. She was the kind of woman who could silence a room just by existing, elegant, confident, everything I'd been told I wasn't. Her red gown sparkled like fire, and her sharp smile was aimed straight at me. She approached us, her perfume filling the air before her voice did. "Well, well," she said smoothly, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Evelyn, you clean up nicely. I almost didn't recognize you." Her tone dripped with sugar and venom. I forced a smile. "Thank you, Miranda. You look bold as always." Her eyebrow twitched and I knew I'd hit a nerve. Alexander intervened quickly, his voice calm but firm. "Miranda, don't start." She laughed, the sound hollow and cold. "Oh, I'm not starting anything. Just surprised to see your secretary here. Didn't realize we'd expanded the guest list to include the staff." Her words stung. But before I could react, Alexander said, "She's here because she's earned it." There was something in his tone protective, almost personal, that made Miranda's smile falter. She leaned closer, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. "Careful, Evelyn. This world eats girls like you alive." With that, she walked away, her laughter echoing behind her like a warning. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. Alexander turned to me, concern flickering in his eyes. "Don't let her get to you," he said quietly. I nodded, but his words did little to calm the storm inside me. Because for the first time that night, I realized something deeper was happening. Something beyond admiration or pity. There was tension, jealousy, and unspoken history swirling all around us, and I had somehow stepped right into the center of it. As the gala continued, Alexander was pulled into conversation after conversation with influential guests, leaving me momentarily alone near the crystal buffet table. I could feel the sting of Miranda's words echoing in my mind, but I refused to let them break me. Instead, I straightened my posture, holding my glass gracefully, trying to embody the confidence I'd always admired in others. That's when a young intern from our office, Lily, approached me timidly. "Evelyn, I can't believe it's really you," she said, her eyes wide with admiration. "You look incredible." For a moment, her genuine smile melted the heaviness in my chest. "Thank you, Lily," I said softly. "You look lovely too," she blushed, glancing nervously around the room. "Everyone's talking about you. They can't believe how different you look. Even Mr. Holt hasn't taken his eyes off you all night." Her words sent a strange flutter through me, part excitement, part confusion. Before I could respond, a voice behind me interrupted, deep, mocking, and unmistakable. "Different, yes, but beauty doesn't erase your place." I turned to find Mr. Grant standing there, a glass of scotch in hand and a smirk plastered across his face. He was one of the senior partners, powerful, arrogant, and exactly the kind of man who enjoyed belittling others. "Excuse me?" I said, trying to keep my tone even. He chuckled, taking a slow sip. "You're playing a dangerous game, Evelyn. Pretty dress, pretty face, it won't change the fact that you're just an assistant." His words hit like knives, but I refused to show weakness. "I'm aware of my position, sir," I said firmly, meeting his gaze. "But tonight I'm here as a guest." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. "A guest? Or a distraction for Alexander's entertainment?" The insinuation made my stomach twist. Before I could respond, Alexander appeared beside me, his jaw clenched tight. "That's enough, Grant." The older man laughed and raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, Alex. just having a little fun. Alexander's glare could have burned through steel. Fun ends when you disrespect my staff, he said sharply. The tension between them was thick enough to cut. Grant sneered and walked away, muttering something under his breath. I looked up at Alexander, my voice barely a whisper. Why do they hate me so much? He sighed deeply, his eyes softening. Because you remind them that class can't buy dignity. Those words stayed with me for the rest of the night. After that confrontation, the energy around us shifted completely. Whispers turned sharper, eyes followed us more boldly, and I could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on my shoulders. I wanted to disappear, but Alexander's steady presence kept me grounded. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that there was something deeper going on, something I wasn't seeing. As the speeches began, Alexander was called up to the stage to welcome the guests. The spotlight bathed him in golden light as he spoke with calm authority, thanking investors, partners, and employees for their loyalty. But then, something unexpected happened. He mentioned me. There's someone here tonight who reminds me that true value isn't found in wealth or titles, he said, his voice echoing through the grand hall. It's found in resilience, in humility, and in hard work. Evelyn, thank you for reminding me and everyone here of that truth. My heart stopped. The crowd turned toward me, and for a moment, I wished the ground would open up and swallow me whole. The applause started slowly, hesitant claps rippling across the room until they grew louder, more confident. My eyes stung as I forced a smile, unsure whether to feel proud or exposed. When he stepped down from the stage, Miranda was already waiting for him, her expression unreadable. I watched her whisper something into his ear before brushing past me, her perfume lingering like smoke. Alexander returned to my side, his face unreadable. You didn't have to do that, I said softly. You've just painted a target on my back. He looked at me seriously. You've had one on your back for years, Evelyn. The difference is, now they'll think twice before aiming. His words were meant to reassure me, but they only deepened my confusion. Why was he defending me so fiercely? What did I mean to him? I excused myself and stepped out onto the balcony for air. The city lights stretched endlessly below, glittering like diamonds, but I felt oddly small among them. My reflection in the glass door showed a woman transformed, yet uncertain of who she truly was. Behind me, the sound of heels clicking approached, slow and deliberate. I turned and found Miranda standing there, her red dress glowing under the moonlight, a knowing smirk curving her lips. You really think you've won him over, don't you? She said coldly. You have no idea what kind of game you've stepped into. Her words sliced through the night air, sharp and venomous. I took a slow breath, refusing to let her see how much they rattled me. I'm not playing any game, I said quietly, though my voice trembled just a little. Miranda laughed, a low, bitter sound. Oh, Evelyn, that's exactly what makes you dangerous. You're too naive to realize that every move in Alexander's world is a strategy. You think he invited you here because he suddenly sees you as his equal? I frowned, confusion and hurt twisting inside me. Why else would he? She took a step closer, her eyes glinting. Because you're his pawn. He's been trying to prove something to the board that loyalty and character matter more than appearances. You're his perfect example, the secretary who blossomed, a convenient symbol to make him look noble. Her words hit like a punch to the chest. I wanted to deny it, to believe she was just trying to manipulate me. But a seed of doubt had already taken root. Miranda smirked, seeing the hesitation flicker across my face. You really thought he saw you, didn't you? That dress, that makeover, it's all part of his story, not yours. She brushed a lock of hair behind her ear and added, Don't take it personally. Alexander always finds a way to turn people into lessons. With that, she turned and walked back inside, leaving me frozen under the silver moonlight. The cool wind whipped through my hair as I stood there, trying to steady my breathing. Could she be right? Was I just a prop in his world of power and reputation? My mind spun with memories, the way he'd defended me. the softness in his eyes when he looked at me, the kindness that once felt genuine. Was it all an illusion? I pressed my hands against the railing, trying to hold myself together, but the doubts grew louder with every passing second. When I finally turned to go back inside, Alexander was standing in the doorway watching me. His expression was unreadable, but something about his eyes told me he'd overheard at least part of our conversation. "Evelyn," he said slowly, his voice low and careful, "whatever she told you, don't let it ruin tonight." But his words only deepened the ache in my chest, because in that moment, I couldn't tell whether he was protecting me or protecting himself. I looked at him, searching his face for a hint of truth, but all I saw was that same calm expression he always wore when things got complicated, steady, unreadable, and impossibly controlled. "Did you know she would say that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's eyes flickered just for a second before he sighed. "Miranda likes to twist things, Evelyn. She's angry that she's no longer the one standing beside me at these events." His explanation sounded logical, smooth even, but something about it didn't sit right. "That doesn't answer my question," I said quietly. His jaw tightened, the charm in his tone slipping away. "You're overthinking," he said, stepping closer. "You don't have to question everything." But I did. Because for years, I had lived in silence, accepting what others thought of me, letting them define my worth. "Not tonight." "Why me, Alexander?" I asked, finally meeting his gaze. "Why invite me to this? Why put me in the spotlight?" The silence stretched painfully long. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Because I wanted them to see you." His words sounded almost tender, but the way he avoided my eyes made my stomach twist. "See me or see your story?" I asked bitterly. That made him pause. His lips parted as if to respond, but no words came out. I took a step back, my chest tightening. "You talk about dignity and character," I continued, my voice trembling. "But did you ever think how it would feel for me to stand in front of all those people who mocked me, not knowing if I'm there because I matter or because I make you look good?" His expression softened slightly, but his silence said everything. I nodded slowly, realization sinking in like ice. That's what I thought. Turning away, I started walking back into the ballroom, trying to keep my composure as tears threatened to spill. The music had changed to something slower, elegant, but the beauty of it only made the ache in my chest sharper. People smiled and clinked glasses, unaware of the storm unraveling just beyond the balcony doors. I felt the walls closing in, the whispers louder, the lights harsher. For the first time that night, I didn't want to be seen anymore. I just wanted to be free from all of it, from the games, the pity, and the illusion that I had finally belonged. I slipped away from the ballroom and into a quiet hallway, lined with golden-framed portraits of past founders, their stern faces watching as if judging my every breath. My heels echoed on the marble floor, each step heavier than the last. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to breathe away from the suffocating glitter of that world. My reflection in the glass doors looked foreign perfect makeup, elegant hair, stunning gown, but inside, I felt hollow. For years I had dreamed of being noticed, of being respected. But now that everyone finally saw me, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like exposure. I found a small side room, dimly lit, where the hum of music barely reached. I sank onto a velvet chair, clutching the edges of my dress, trying to steady my racing thoughts. I thought about the years I'd spent working late, organizing Alexander's meetings, defending him when others doubted his choices. I'd trusted him more than I'd trusted anyone. I didn't want to believe Miranda, but the way he hesitated when I asked why me kept replaying in my head. A part of me wanted to run, to disappear before my heart shattered completely. But then I heard the sound of footsteps approaching, deliberate and familiar. "Evelyn," Alexander's voice came softly from the doorway. "You shouldn't be here alone." I didn't turn around. I needed air, I said flatly. He stepped closer, his tone gentle but insistent. I know you're hurt, but don't let her poison your mind. I didn't invite you as a prop or a message. I invited you because you deserve to be there. I laughed bitterly, my eyes still fixed on the floor. Deserved? Or useful? He didn't respond right away, and that silence was louder than any confession. Finally, he said, I wanted to show them what I see every day. Your strength, your patience, your heart. I looked up at him then, tears blurring my vision. Then why does it feel like I'm the only one paying the price for your point? His face softened with guilt, and for the first time, I saw something real regret. You're right, he whispered. Maybe I did this wrong. But it was never about pity, Evelyn. It was about admiration. I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But in that moment, I didn't know if admiration was enough to heal the bruise his choices had left on my heart. He moved closer, close enough that I could see the sincerity flickering behind his carefully composed expression. Evelyn, you changed this company more than you realize, he said quietly. You brought compassion into rooms full of greed. You made people listen differently. I wanted them to see that. His words sounded beautiful, maybe even true, but I'd heard enough beautiful words in my life to know they could still cut. You should have told me, I whispered. You should have warned me before turning me into your example. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. You're right. I thought it would mean more if you saw it for yourself, if you saw how strong you've become. I shook my head, a tear slipping down my cheek. Strength doesn't come from standing under a spotlight, Alexander. It comes from surviving what happens after it fades. The silence between us stretched like a thread ready to snap. For a moment, he looked as though he might reach out, but then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it and sighed, his expression shifting back to the cold composure I'd come to recognize from the office. Duty calls, he murmured. That was it. The moment was over. He turned toward the door, and I realized that no matter how kind he was, his world and mine would never truly meet. I stood up, smoothing my dress, my voice steady now. You know, Alexander, maybe Miranda was right about one thing. You do turn people into lessons. But I think tonight, I finally learned mine. He stopped, glancing back at me with a look I couldn't quite decipher. And what lesson is that? I smiled faintly, even as my heart ached, that I don't need to be chosen to be seen. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. I walked past him, back toward the grand hall where laughter and music filled the air as if nothing had happened. No one noticed me leave through the side exit. No one cared that the girl who had stolen the room's attention was gone. Outside, the cold night air greeted me like an old friend. I looked up at the glittering city skyline and breathed deeply. Somewhere between the pain and the pride, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe tonight wasn't about being admired. It was about finally reclaiming my story. The city lights shimmered above me as I stepped out of that golden cage, my heels clicking against the stone pavement, each step echoing louder than the last. The night air was crisp, biting against my skin, but it felt like freedom, raw and real. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking behind anyone, carrying files or adjusting my pace to match someone else's rhythm. I was walking for me. I found a bench near the fountain outside the venue, the water glistening like liquid diamonds under the moonlight. I sat there, letting the muffled sounds of laughter and music drift from the ballroom, distant now, almost unreal. A limousine pulled up nearby, and through its tinted window, I caught a glimpse of Alexander inside, looking out toward me. Our eyes met for a fleeting second. There was something in his gaze, regret, maybe longing, but I turned away before I could be pulled back into that storm. I didn't need his validation anymore. The night had stripped away every illusion, leaving me bare but unbroken. My phone buzzed with a message from Lily, the intern. You were amazing tonight. Everyone's still talking about you. I smiled faintly. Not because of the attention, but because it reminded me that transformation wasn't about changing how others saw me, it was about changing how I saw myself. I thought about the woman who'd walked into that gala nervous, desperate to belong, and realized she was gone. The woman sitting there under the stars wasn't defined by anyone's approval. Not by Alexander's admiration, not by Miranda's jealousy, not by the cruel whispers of people who would never understand my journey. I stood up, feeling the cool night breeze lift my hair as if urging me forward. The world suddenly seemed wider, full of paths I'd never dared to walk before. Maybe I'd leave the company. Maybe I'd start something of my own, something that didn't require permission to shine. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time, the uncertainty didn't scare me. It excited me. As I walked away from the glowing lights of the gala, I caught my reflection in a shop window. A woman in a sapphire dress, eyes steady, heart fierce. I smiled at her. She wasn't a secretary anymore. She was a survivor, a dreamer. And tonight, she had rewritten her own story.